Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us live again this Thriving Thursday. If you're here catching this live, please do us all a favor. Comment down below, #live. And if you are catching this as a replay, give us a #replay down below. What that does is pulls this awesome information up to the top of the feed and helps more amazing ladies in this group to catch these gold nuggets. And so over the last month, if you've been catching and keeping along, we've been getting some amazing nuggets from my dear friend Samia Bano, our happiness expert. And the things she's been sharing with us have been everything from how simple it can be to write a book, and easy even if you go through the right processes with yourself, and all the way to how can we connect and communicate better with our hearts to live a more heart-centered life for us. And so if you haven't caught either of those, make sure to get into the group. You can catch those lives up above in the tabs, or in the events tab. There we go. And more than anything, let's celebrate Samia's birthday as she's here to share with us a gift. So comment down below a little bit of love for her as well. Samia, thank you so much for joining us again today.
Yay. Thank you for having me back, Samantha. I just love connecting with you. I have so much fun every time we're together. I just love it.
Oh, me too. I'm always walking away with more notes and like gold nuggets. I'm like, oh yeah. So let's go ahead and dive into this awesome topic today. This topic of your own healing perspective and storytelling. Can you start us off there?
Sure. So, I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse, and for me, it's been like this whole journey of healing. And for sure, I'm still on the journey. But, there are all these stages that you go through in the healing process. And thankfully, I'm at a stage in my healing process where I'm able to be really free and open about sharing a lot of what I've been through in my healing process with other people, and use that as a tool to educate others about trauma healing, about issues of abuse. And that is one of the things that's most meaningful for me, because we have, oh my gosh, we are unfortunately living in a society where abuse is such a huge problem. I mean, the stats are 1 out of every 3 women have experienced some form of abuse in their life by the time they're 25 years old. And 1 out of every 6 men have experienced abuse in their life by the time they're adults. So it's just horrendous. And then you add to that other forms of trauma that people may be experiencing, whether it's the loss of a loved one or going through some kind of chronic or serious disease, living with some kind of a disability, as my brother does. There's so many different forms of trauma that people go through in their lives. So if you are not educated about trauma healing, how to help yourself, how to help your loved ones, we all are sort of that much less able to be in control of our wellness and help our loved ones be, well and happy in their lives. So this is a huge passion of mine, and storytelling is a huge aspect of how I engage in this education and prevention process, because when you're talking about such heavy subjects, just think about what allows you to think about and listen and learn about such things. Storytelling is one of the best ways I have found.
I love all this. And it really connects well with the conversations we've been having throughout the month of love. All of February, you were bringing up these great nuggets of how do we communicate better with ourselves? How do we understand our stories? And so I'm so excited to wrap this all into a beautiful gift and bring the storytelling side out. Okay, so a lot of us, not a lot, as you already stated, many of us have experienced trauma on so many different levels in so many different ways. So my first question I want to bring to you is like, how can we move through and upwards rather than just getting over it, you know, that like, oh, just get over it kind of.
Yeah. I think the first thing that I had to understand about, especially my kind of trauma, well, but it's actually true for a lot of different kinds of trauma, is that oftentimes when you have experienced that, you can develop a lot of feelings of shame and guilt or anger. And very important thing to know about these feelings is that every feeling that you feel, there's a good reason for it. You're not going crazy. No, there's a good reason. And in its own way, these feelings are actually signals from your brain, from your mind, from your heart, from your body. And in their own way, they're trying to actually help you heal. They're actually trying to help you move along the healing process. And so one of the very first and most important things you can do is don't try to suppress or deny these feelings. Just try to accept them, just accept that, yes, I'm feeling this and it's okay to feel this. And that becomes the not the mechanism, but the awesome first step that,
Mm.
that acceptance becomes the awesome first step to begin to actually let go and resolve these feelings in the most healthy ways and really truly begin to move through the healing process in a much more empowered way for yourself. So that's the first, I would say, aspect of how you move up and through through this process. And then, my second thing is like reach out for help and support.
Mm.
Sometimes it's really difficult to find the right help and support. I know I had a huge challenge finding the right support for me. It wasn't until I got into college and I had access to psychological services at our student counseling center. I was able to go see a therapist and, oh my gosh, found the right help in that
Mm.
person. And that made all the difference. That made all the difference. And so once you have the right help and you have the right support, then again you can be, like your healing process can proceed leaps and bounds. Like it becomes so much more easy and faster to go through that.
Mm. I love what you noted there, especially at the end of how we're not getting around something. We're not avoiding anything here. We're simply making the process of getting through and upwards easier, quicker, more manageable. And I can definitely second what you said about getting help because in my teens, I felt really lost and confused also, and turning to a therapist helped then. And then I didn't have any help for so long in my 20s. And in my
Yeah.
late 20s, finally found coaches to help me move quicker, right? Oh, I
Yes.
love that.
Isn't that amazing? That's actually a really cool parallel between our stories because I had that therapist access to therapy or counseling in college. And then I lost that access when I graduated. And then in my late 20s, I found my happiness coach and mentor. And oh my gosh, what a difference that made. Yeah.
Oh, great minds think alike. I love that. Oh, okay. So let's come back to the storytelling. I
Mhm.
love how you brought up that storytelling is a way for us to share and a way for us to understand in a whole different way. So
Yeah.
how does someone get a storytelling perspective?
I think to get a storytelling perspective, you need to have a certain level of detachment. You need to have reached a certain
Ooh.
level of detachment so you can sort of look back at what you have experienced and see it almost from this higher level big picture perspective of, like, okay, what actually happened, what was going on around me, not just inside of me.
Mm.
uh, Although even thinking back about what was going on inside of you, that's also a very valuable aspect of what to connect to in the storytelling process. But to be able to do it from this more detached place, um, because then, you can really, really tell a story about what happened, um, in a more fuller way, in a more richer way, and in a way that you don't end up triggering yourself and hurting yourself in the process of the storytelling. Like if you're not coming from this detached place, it's like you're still in the moment. It's like, for a lot of trauma survivors, there are all kinds of things that can trigger us. I remember one time, this happened actually fairly recently. I was working with one of my coaches to sort of, and he was helping me refine the way that I share my story in the context of a webinar that I was creating. And now it's been years. I've become very used to sharing my story, but for some reason that day, I happened to tap into a memory that just came out, and I started to share it, but it was so triggering, and I was, wow, suddenly like the floodgates were open, and I was just like, and it took me like several minutes before I could like calm myself down, and my poor coach, he had never seen me like that before, but he was an awesome coach, and he just, did all the right things to support me through. Um, but so that can happen, but the point is that you don't want that to happen ideally. Like if you know that you're still in a vulnerable place, or there are certain aspects of your story that when you try to share them, they're too triggering for you, then don't share those parts of your story. You want to choose, and you have the right to choose, and you have the ability to choose what parts of your story you share and what parts of your story you don't. And so you want to sort of focus on sharing those parts of the story that you can share in a way that's safe for you to share, and at the same time is informative and educational for other people who are listening.
Yes. And even for ourselves too, being able to step out of that and and look at it as a whole, as a whatever it is, neither good nor bad, as we always talk
Yep.
about, and
Yep.
really pull out the positive learnings, because there's a reason for the way that we responded to that
Mhm.
experience. And so I
Mhm.
love how you're bringing up that it's a way for us to choose to learn from ourselves and be able to choose to show others as well. Oh,
Yeah.
so powerful.
And I will just quickly mention this analogy that one of my teachers gave. She was like, never share a story when you're still bleeding from it. Never share a
Oh,
story when you're still bleeding from it. So that's has just always stuck with me, and it just is a way for me to really remember, that like when I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do I share? When do I share it? It's like if you're still bleeding from it, don't talk about it. That's not the right time.
hold off for a little bit. Get a little more detached.
Yeah.
Oh my. So this kind of brings me to my last question here of how how can helping other people help us to get out of our own cycles?
Mm. Hmm. Oh man, it can be helpful at so many different levels. Again, it's different for different people, the process that they go through in their healing. But I know for me, one of the things that happened was that after I experienced my trauma, I became very introverted and very isolated, not in my physical outdoor environment. I was still surrounded by family and friends and people who loved me, but internally, mentally, emotionally, I'd put up all these walls and just isolated myself because of, the trauma. It was part of the trauma response. I was so scared of getting hurt again. I didn't know how to deal with my own emotions. I didn't know how to deal with other people's emotions. And so the best I could do was just sort of try and shut everyone and all the possible drama and actual drama that was going on around me out. So, you know, that left me with myself, and myself at that time was not happy. It was very dark, and so I was very, very miserable. And my honestly, my first big breakthrough in my healing came when something happened in life that, I was like, okay, I have to think about not just myself. And that was my brother. He had an accident that landed him in a wheelchair. I mean, to this day, he's wheelchair bound. But when the accident first happened, and we were all in our teens. We were like fairly young, but my mom, she was like overwhelmed, and my dad, they were busy trying to take care of us, and then on top of like trying to manage my brother's health care and this and that and adapt to having a son who's now suddenly wheelchair bound and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, that was like that time when I saw what my family was going through, what they were struggling with. It was like, okay, do I still continue to keep myself shut off from all of that, or do I allow myself to see and feel something of what they're going through in terms of feeling some compassion, some empathy, and try to do something about it. And thank God I tried to do something about it. I allowed myself to whatever extent to feel something of what was happening, and that took me out of myself, and it gave me something to do other than just obsess over my own suffering and my own trauma, right? And so the more I spent time thinking about my brother and my mother and my sister and my family and trying to do what I could to help them, the more I just had something else to do that was positive and healthy and helpful. And so it was not only just helpful for them, but it ended up being really amazingly helpful for me because it helped me get out of my own dark space.
Oh, oh my God, you've highlighted such a beautiful nugget there. So we've already talked about how we want to detach from the trauma. We want to understand it from a whole new perspective. And you've brought up how when we help others, we get out of our own way a little bit, we
Mhm.
can really learn so much more about ourselves. We can learn how to find benefits. It's not that we don't want to be sad. We don't want to feel the feelings because like you said at the beginning of this conversation, those feelings are important for a reason. They're telling us things that our body, our system, our mind isn't quite happy.
Yeah.
However, rather than being stuck and bogged down by that,
Yes.
we're getting out and helping others and then feeling help from it.
Yes, because the feelings, the cool thing is that they're amazing bits of feedback. And these feelings, whether it's any of these I'll just use the word negative in quotes because they're not really negative, but we perceive them as negative in some contexts. Um, they're like alarm bells. They're like alarm bells. And so
Yes.
you want to listen to the alarm bell, but the alarm bell is not meant to ring forever. You're not meant to stay stuck in a place with the alarm bell ringing constantly. Then it becomes dysfunctional. So you do need to listen to it, and then you need to be able to turn it off.
Find that switch.
Yeah,
We have a
exactly.
great question here too. By
Mhm.
associating with others' trauma, do you
Ah,
feel you'd disassociate from your own? Great
It's
question.
yeah. So there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, right? Like, so again, you like listening to other people who have survived a trauma, especially if it's a similar trauma to yours, it can be immensely helpful, healing, and empowering because number one, it lets you know you're not alone. Oh my gosh, that's such a big thing for
Yeah.
us trauma survivors is that we feel like we're alone and we're in it, um, all by ourselves. And so to hear other stories lets you know you're not alone. Also, you can learn from their stories, like what has helped them, what kept them struggling. So, you can share those lessons with each other and so you don't have to figure it all out by yourself. So those are really healthy aspects of, sharing and listening to each other's stories. Uh, what you don't want to do is, get into a place where you're sort of like, again, if both of you are traumatized and neither of you knows how to help each other or yourself, then you can end up just being even more miserable together and pulling each other down. Right. So if you hear someone sharing a story and you find yourself experiencing that impact, that it's actually just pulling you down more and you don't know how to help yourself in that situation feel better, you don't know how to help the other person feel better in that situation, that's your indication that you're out of your league a little bit in that situation. Like, step away from it. That either is not the right kind of story for you to be here or not that to be hearing, or not the right time for you to be hearing it for whatever reason. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I might even add on to that. It's less so about associating with other people's trauma and more so about finding ways to relate to others in the world. So finding a place where you can feel good about helping others, whether it's community service or a family member or giving your time or simply internet and being part of an amazing Facebook group and sharing real value, helping you to get out of your traumas for that moment and those feelings so that you can learn a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you want to think about, why are you sharing your story and why are you listening to someone else's story? Ideally, you want to do it because you want to learn something and you want to share some learning, you know? Like, don't just do it for the drama of it.
Right. Yes. Oh my golly gosh. Samia, this has been such a gold producing conversation today. Really, thank you again for taking the time on your birthday, nonetheless, to share with us and join with us. If you have more questions, ladies, please comment them down below. This will replay in the group, and Samia is a part of our group, and so when she gets a moment, she'll make sure to get in there and answer any kind of questions. We will be dropping also down below the link to her website. Please reach out, connect with her. Like we said, find a coach that really resonates with you. Find somebody to talk to. It doesn't have to be a coach, a mentor, an accountability buddy,
Mhm.
somebody who you really resonate with and can connect with to become the storyteller of your own story. Oh, well, thank you again for joining us today,
So
Samia.
much. I love you, Samantha.
I love you. Bye, ladies.